Hey everyone, it's Quick here doing a slightly longer video on all of the settings that you can change for my Path of Exile Leveling guide. By default, you press F10 to open the settings. All of the hotkeys, including the ability to show settings, are now configurable. By default, hiding the notes and guide are Alt F1. The zone images would be Alt F2. The level tracker is Alt F3. The skill tree, which isn't shown right now, would be Alt F, and then the gem setup is Alt G. New this league, I've also added a betrayal help and incursion help overlay. So just showing the betrayal, that's what it looks like. The beauty of this is you can shorten it, move it, and still keep it up while you're doing things in game. A lot of other ways don't have that. So I'll show how to edit that file a little later. We also have offsets now, so all of the overlays can be moved to anywhere on the screen and now to a secondary screen. So if you wanted to move it to the right, you just add one to an X value. To the left, you'd subtract one from an X value. Down, you'd add one to a Y value, and up, you'd subtract one from a Y value. And you can do that for all of the different overlays. Over here we have basic options. Text size is self-explanatory, but you can make the text larger or smaller based on your resolution. I have a list of fonts now that you can change your guide to. If you don't see, these are fonts that I've tested, so if you don't see one that you'd like, just let me know and I can add it. I still highly recommend Consolas just because it's fixed width and looks the best. Opacity is how see-through the backgrounds are. If you set the opacity all the way to 0, you would be able to see through the background and the text, so don't do that. If you hover over a bunch of these different options, I have tooltips, but for example, with the opacity, 150 is about as low as you can go and still read the text, and then if you want it to not be see-through, you can set it all the way up to 200. Display timeout is how many seconds approximately the guide is shown in each time you change zones before it hides, so that you can see more of the screen. If you need to make that longer, you can, or if you want it to never hide, you can just set it to 0. If you set start hidden to true, none of the guides will show up by default, and you'll have to press a hotkey to have it shown. Persist text has the text from the act guide stay and just the controls disappear after the timeout. Hiding the act guide would just be if you don't want to see the right side, if you want more screen real estate and you've got that memorized, you can hide that. And then experience or penalty down here is whether your experience is shown or your penalty is shown. So right now, if the experience was 97%, the penalty would be 3%. Right now, the penalty would be 0. You can change the width of the zone notes, the act notes, and the gem setup. I find 40 is the best for, again, maximum screen real estate, but you can tweak that if you'd like. The tree side is which side of your screen the tree goes on. So I prefer to have it on the right so that I can still see my health bar, but it is actually easier to work with the skill tree with this on the left. So it's up to you where you want to put that. And then the name of the image that you're using. So by default, if you're using PoE skill tree, when you export the image of your skill tree, it calls it tree.jpg, so that's what I use. But if you created your own PNG file just by taking a screenshot of, say, a PoE Ninja build that you found that you liked, you could, as long as you have that name here, it will use it. And I'll show you where to put that file a little later in the video as well. We also have colors. So the background is black now, as you can see. If you want to go put it back to gray, you can. You can also use any hex values for any of these, or just the name of a color. I've used red, green, and blue hex values here just to show that off, but you could obviously just write red, green, or blue. Last but not least, we have builds now, so I'll show that in a minute, but all of The builds that I've created are in the builds folder, and so you can go through and select different ones. You can also edit that build to change the gem setup. I'm not going to show that in this video, but you can check out my other videos. I'll do one on actually creating a build, so you see how all of this works. And then you can create your own new build. It'll be whatever you call it here, and it's just going to be a copy of all of the notes from this one, but it'll clear the gems so that you can create them yourself. Alright, so that's all the settings you can do in-game. Let's go look at the folder to see what you can do outside of it. So if we're in our leveling guide here, we can go to the builds folder, and we're in default right now. So you can first and foremost go to the acts and change any of the zone information. So for instance, if you wanted to give yourself a note, you could, and you can change the color by putting an R, G, or B in front of it, and it will use the color from the settings associated with that. You can also do white if you want, but default is white. So if you save that and then come back in here and reload it, you should see that that note now shows up. So if you want to leave your own notes, you can edit it that way. Okay, and then the guide at the end is the act guide, so that's what shows up in every zone throughout the act. And then this is where your tree.jpg goes. So again, you can give it any name you want as long as you set that in the settings, but you can put one in each of the different acts. So you'll notice this is a small tree, and then in Act 2, you can't see it here, but it's slightly bigger. And so if we're here and we show you the tree, there it is. It's small, it's just the beginning. And then when we make it to Act 2, you see it gets bigger, so you can see just the information you need and where to go next while you're moving around, and select those nodes as you level up. If you don't have a tree.jpg in any given act, it will just use the one from the act before it. The gems are where the build information, the gem setup is stored. Again, I'll go over that in more detail in another video, but just so you know. And then again, you can put any number of builds here. So manually, you could copy and paste these, change the name, modify anything. In our images folder, you can change any of the layout images if you really wanted to. But more importantly, this is where the syndicate and temple cheat sheets are. So you can go through and add your own betrayal masters that you prefer, and then that'll show up in the game. Okay, I think that's everything that you can modify, or that you should modify. You can obviously go tweak anything you want. It's all open source. But yeah, now all of those settings that used to be JSON are conveniently within this settings window. So I hope that makes your life easier and lets you set up this leveling guide exactly how you want it. All right, everyone. I'll see you in maps.